Imagine highly trained war veterans fighting a bunch of flightless birds. Sounds like a one-sided battle, right? Well, it may not be as one-sided as you think. This all came to pass in one of history's most interesting wars, the Great Emu War. It all started in 1932 after World War I on the brink of the Great Depression. Many soldiers had just come back from the war and were settling down in Australia. These farmer veterans began to run into problems. The Australian soil was hard to farm. Even worse though, the emus had begun to realize that the newly tilled soil of the farmlands was the perfect place to breed and look for food. Emus terrorized the farmers, destroying their crops and the fences meant to keep out rabbits. The emu population was giant, numbering almost 20,000. Another thing about emus, these birds were big, many being over 6 feet tall and between 90 and 120 pounds. These birds weren't just small pests that you could chase off. The farmers were at their limit with these annoying birds, and the government was doing nothing to help them. A group of veteran farmers approached the government, specifically the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pierce. The farmers either wanted the subsidies that the government had promised them, or they wanted the emu problem taken care of. Pierce agreed to addressing the latter. The military became involved in October, headed by Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. Meredith was accompanied by 2 commanding soldiers, 2 Lewis guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. This was where the military ran into its first problem. A delay was caused by heavy rain that had scattered the emus. By November, the rainfall had ceased and the operation could continue. Troops had been deployed to assist the farmers in their fight against the emus. The first encounter was in Campion, where 50 of the birds were spotted. Farmers attempted to herd the emus so that they could be ambushed, but the emus were intelligent, and they split into small groups, making them difficult targets. The emus were able to avoid the brunt of the attack, and only a number were killed. 2 days later, an ambush was prepared near a dam, where 1,000 emus were spotted. The gunners had learned from their previous mistakes, and they waited until the emus had moved into range before they began to shoot. Only 12 birds had been shot before misfortune struck and the guns jammed. The emus ran and scattered. In the following days, the military moved further south, where the emus were reportedly fairly tamed. Only a small amount of success followed this maneuver. It was reported that each pack seems to have its own leader now, a big, black-plumed bird which stands fully 6 feet high and keeps watch while his mates carry out their work of destruction and warns them of our approach. At one point, one of the guns was mounted to a truck to keep up with the fast birds, though this proved ineffective. It was hard to aim on the bumpy ride, and the emus were faster than most of the trucks. Emus can run up to 40 miles per hour. Ornithologist Dominic Cervente commented, "The machine gunner's dreams of point-blank fire into serried masses of emus were soon dissipated. The emu command had evidently ordered guerrilla tactics, and its unwieldy army soon split up into innumerable small units that made use of the military equipment uneconomic. A crestfallen field force therefore withdrew from the combat area after about a month. Even Meredith was struck by the intelligence and stamina of these birds. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks." After negative news coverage of the war, citing how few emus had been killed, the Australian House of Representatives decided to withdraw military personnel on November 8th. The first attempt at fighting these clever birds proved ineffective, but the Australian farmers weren't going to be done that quickly. The emus continued to attack and destroy crops. Farmers were once again asking for something to be done about the emus. The Minister of Defense resumed military efforts against the emu. The first 2 days of the campaign were successful, though the third was less so. The initial success continued though, and the army was averaging around 100 emus killed per week in December. The military was eventually recalled. The second attempt was much more successful than the first. The military had failed to control the emu population. The birds were still destroying the crops of many farmers. Military assistance was once again requested in 1934, 1943, and 1948, but it was ultimately turned down by the government. In order to address the ongoing complaints about the emu, the government instated a bounty, giving a reward to farmers for every emu killed, and some ammo was distributed to farmers. Despite their best efforts, the Australians had lost their war to the emus. And that, folks, is how a bunch of Australian war veterans lost a war to a bunch of oversized chickens.